Well, through board meetings, but as I said, I'm usually in here every day. And her and I communicate back and forth, and if there's something that needs to be communicated, she'll send emails to all the directors. I stick my head in the door and say, do you need any?
Well, and I think when you have a board member that, I think they mean well, they micromanage. And to me, micromanagement means getting involved in way too much of the daily minutia. Somebody being called in sick, or what the menu items are, or HR issues, or, what paper you're going to buy, or things like that. That, to me, that's micromanagement. And that doesn't need to be part of the board. The board should have a director that they trust to be able to take care of those daily things, the things that happen to us. If a copier breaks down or an oven goes down, it's the director's responsibility to get it fixed and make sure everything's functioning properly, or the staff's properly, or the staff has what they need to make the meals go out, or activities happen. But that's not a board member's job. It's not their job to get way done in the daily minutia, the little tiny things that is not. That's where the micromanagement comes in. Coming in every day like Jim does, just to say, hey, I don't have to give him a detailed hour by hour play of what I did, but he'll come in and I'll say, hey, you know what? We had a problem with the oven and we may need to replace that. Keep it on your radar. Or right now we're dealing with a hood that's 100 years old and we may have to replace the hood. Keep that on your radar. So that when we go into board meetings, Jim's informed. And so if I forget something, that happens too. You get in and you talk about things and you forget something, then Jim will say, hey, remember that when you told me that? And then I'll go, oh yeah. Well, anytime we have anything that needs to be handled, that may be like a repair that's maybe going to be an expenditure later on that we may have to budget for or plan for, the kitchen manager usually calls. She takes care of the equipment. If there's something that's broken there, she calls. If something comes up that's like today, for instance, we called the repairman in to come and check our washer. Well, the washer's probably not fixable, so we're probably going to need a new washing machine. So she'll come and tell me. We're probably going to need a new washing machine. So then I go to tell Jim, we're probably going to need a new washing machine. And then we actually have a plant properties and equipment committee that meets to talk about those specific issues. So it's a chain of command. I think it's important in any organization that there is a organizational flow chart, that you have who everyone reports to, because it's important to know if you have an issue, where do you go? Especially if you're a new team member, if you're a new member of the kitchen and you're not really quite sure and you need a new can opener or you need a new food processor, and it's important for that person to know to go to Shelley or the assistant kitchen manager or the kitchen manager, and then they know they come to me and then I go to the board. And I know it's required in our federal grant to have an organizational chart, and I think it's important just so that when you have someone come on staff, and then that helps streamline the process if people know who they need to talk to or where they need to go, or if it's something as simple as a knife set, then Shelley knows that she has permission for that. Those are communications that you have with that kitchen manager in advance to say, if you need something that's less than $500, order it. I mean, and not everybody has that luxury. But if it's within a certain spending limit, that she knows that it's okay. And if there's any question, she'll come into my office and the kitchen manager will say, hey, I really need 5 new carts. Can I order them? And that's when I look at what the cost of the carts are and make a decision based on where our funding is and where we're at financially, and say, yes, you can, or we might have to wait a month. And then if it's something like a big purchase like a hood where it's $30,000, then I take that to them and let the board decide on, how are we going to come up with this money? Do we have the funding? Do we need to write a special grant? Can we ask for special funding from WSSB? Is there somewhere else we can go? Locally, is this something that maybe and then you report the the decision to whoever's in charge of that department, whether it be a class or a piece of kitchen equipment or office copier. I think the board is probably for a director, the board is the most important part of this job, because they're the ones that let you know, one, you're doing something right, or if you're behind in something or you're falling short on something. Their reassurance for your budget, their reassurance that you're on the right track financially. They oversee over the finances. Our board actually has a subcommittee, a finance committee, that is all our officers that go through our financial reports, profit and loss, balance sheets, budgets, to every detail. Every check we write, every penny we spend, they have information to help them know that what we're doing is on the up and up, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that the money's being spent where it needs to be spent, that grants are allocated in the proper areas that they were written for. So if we get a grant from Daniel's fund for $100,000 to buy chairs, they make sure that that money is being spent in the place that it's supposed to be. I think that it's really important for the board to be involved in every aspect of what happens in the organization, for guidance, but also to make sure that everything is on the up and up. You want to protect yourself as a director to make sure that all the funds are allocated properly, that there's no overspending, that everything's accounted for, that donations come in and are put where they're supposed to be. And I think it's kind of like an audit. You want to have an audit to protect yourself as a director, to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be. But the board is a part of that as well, because if it wasn't, the board needs to make sure that everything is accounted for, that everything is where it's supposed to be, the money is being spent, because as a director, you need oversight. I don't care how good you are or how well you manage things, you still need oversight. And it's not in a micromanagement way. You don't need a micromanaging board. You need a board that is paying attention to make sure everything's the way it should be. The funds are being spent the way they should be, that you're doing the job the way it should be done. And it's a protection for yourself to make sure that if anything goes wrong, the board's aware of it. And mistakes happen. Things get, put in the wrong accounts or whatever, but it's important that the board knows those things. That's another part of communication with your board. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And if something happens, you need to be forefront with your board to say, hey, look, we got WSSB funds. I allocated them to this area. I can't spend them here. We may have to give them back or whatever. That's something that also needs to be communicated to your board members. It's important that Jim knows if I make a mistake and I come clean with it, that I messed up, I didn't do something right, that they're there to, one, help you fix it and make sure that everything's where it should be and where it needs to be. So it's really important that the board knows more than just the aspects of, being a board member and helping out at fundraisers, but you really need a board that's very involved, because it does protect you in the long run as a director. Don't you agree, Jim?